Hi, this is Robbie with Tickner Photography. I've had my Sony Alpha A7 for about a year now, so I thought I would kind of do a one-year overview of this camera. After having this camera for a year, I've taken it around the world with me, and it's performed very well. The weight of this camera is perfect for travel. It's so light, especially with the kit lens, or most E-mount lenses are quite light, but the kit lens in particular, the 28-70 variable aperture is extraordinarily light. So with a rapid strap, you can have it on your side, walk around all day, and you barely even feel it. It's very nice that way. The ergonomics of this camera, a little bit off, but they've grown on me. When I first got the camera, the grip felt very strange to me. It's too small and the shutter release is in the wrong position. I'm used to a larger DSLR where the shutter button is moved forward. Here it's like a retro style, it's on top, and it's uncomfortable for me to reach. I have to shift my grip in order to press the shutter release. I've gotten used to it over time, and now it's not that big of an issue, but in the beginning it was quite annoying. Also with the smaller grip, if I have a larger lens on here, I was out on the patio doing some macro photography, so I had my Sony A-mount adapter on here with my 100mm macro. So it's out here, and it weighs a little bit. It's not that heavy of a lens, but trying to hold that while also holding a flash, it became very heavy and very awkward in the hand, just because the grip is relatively small for the camera when you add weight to it. But other than that, it's not too bad. The electronic viewfinder on this camera is quite good. In theory, it might actually be better than the A77, though my usage with it is a little bit strange. I've gotten better since I first started using it, but with this camera, I tend to overexpose my images by a third of a stop, 2/3 of a stop, if I'm just going very quickly and just using my eye and the live view, so it's predicting what the shot will be. I tend to overexpose a smidge, and I've gotten better with that. With the A77, it never happened. It was always spot on. So the brightness of this EVF must be slightly different, or I'm just perceiving it differently. So not sure, but something to keep in mind. The buttons and wheels on this are very nicely placed. I really like the metal aperture and shutter buttons up top. They have a nice click when you move them, and they feel very solid. The back wheel, all the buttons seem to be very well placed. The side ports on this, I wish there were a few more. It has audio inputs, which would be nice, but I don't do video, so they're basically useless to me. It also has HDMI and USB. I wish it had a shutter release port, because I have a couple of shutter releases, but now I can't use them, or my intervalometer. So I've been forced to use my infrared remote on this a couple times, and I've also had to purchase the time-lapse app, which kind of pisses me off that I have to do that, but I've purchased the time-lapse app for the camera, and it takes care of most of my intervalometer needs. Just wish the camera had that built in. Seems kind of annoying that it doesn't, and I'm forced to purchase it after the fact. In theory, the camera is weather sealed. I've never needed that feature. It's kind of nice to know that it is, just in case. Taking this camera around the world, one thing that I really do wish it had was GPS to geotag my images. Because it doesn't, it's forced me to use my secondary, basically a dedicated GPS tracker that you time sync all of your cameras to, and then you can use Lightroom to sync everything up, but it's really convenient just to have them automatically geotagged. You don't need one additional piece of equipment that you need to make sure is charged, you need to make sure is synced, you need to make sure is on. That I kind of wish it had. What this does have that I initially assumed was kind of a gimmick, Wi-Fi and NFC. Looking at it when I first got the camera, I was totally meh. But having used the camera in a professional capacity over the last year in a few instances, I actually found it very useful. So I was shooting a wedding, and after the ceremony, I decided to look through the camera, and I picked a couple really good shots that I got of the bride and groom doing the ceremony stuff. And I used the Wi-Fi and NFC to beam the pictures to my phone, and then I posted them on Facebook and their social media. So they had professional images during the ceremony. It was pretty wild. And it's very easy to use. You install an app on your phone, and then you essentially touch the phone to the side of your camera, it bleeps, and a couple seconds later you can send pictures back and forth. It's really cool. So I found that to be actually quite useful. So speaking of weddings, I've used this camera in a professional capacity a couple times. Weddings, nightclubs, and out and about locally in San Diego, and it's performed very well. High ISO is great. I'm able to shoot consistently up 3200, 6400 ISO. I'm quite happy with the results. Above that, make it black and white or something, but it's still functional because it's very noisy. As noise performance goes, it's quite a bit better than my previous camera. One feature that I do wish this had, and the Sony A99 for that matter, is a pop-up flash as a commander for the other Sony flashes that I own. For this particular shot at the wedding, I was forced to resort to using my A77. I was dual-wielding camera, so it was not a problem, and I had planned for this contingency, but I was forced to use that camera instead of this camera because it doesn't have the pop-up commander flash. With the A77, you just pop up the flash, it's in wireless mode. I can position 2 or 3 flashes wherever I want them, and it works everything out. It's very fast. With this, I have to break out my wireless stuff, my radio triggers, and I just didn't have time. We were in the middle of the road. I had the bride and groom for literally 2 or 3 minutes at for this particular shot. So I used my other camera and made it happen. But one thing I wish they would add to some of these full-frame DSLRs. I've also used this camera underwater. I just got an underwater housing from a Russian company, Mikon, I believe, and that's working very well. Camera fits in there perfectly. I have complete control over it. The camera even has an underwater white balance setting, which I found really convenient to have. I've only had the opportunity to go underwater once so far, but I'm gonna hopefully do that many times over the next year, and I'll see how it performs, but so far, very well. So like I said, I've taken the camera around the world. I've been to Southeast Asia, I've been to Central America, and it performs great. I use a Black Rapid strap on it, and because it's so light, you can carry it around all day. It's very small. It doesn't look like you're carrying around a giant, expensive camera. So people don't even give it a second look, which is really nice traveling. You don't have to worry about that at all. And it performs great. The only issue while traveling, or in any instance really, is this sucker eats batteries like a fiend. I typically always have 3 batteries with me, at least, when I'm out and about for long periods of time. Keep them in my camera bag, and they're pretty small. They're half the size of the standard Alpha full-frame camera batteries. So you can get 300-400 shots on a battery. I turn the camera off between each shot, so that might preserve it a little bit longer, but that's typically what I'm getting. So a full day of shooting, I will go through 2 complete batteries and might just be switching on to my 3rd as I'm finishing the day. And that's 12, 15 hours out and about walking around. And it works out okay. Also, because it's so light, I was able to use a much smaller tripod. I just used my Gobi Gorilla Pod while I was traveling. Didn't have the opportunity to use it that often, but there were a few spots like this cathedral where I could just stick this little tripod on there, set it down on the ground, and take a pretty cool shot, HDR it so everything matched up just fine. So all in all, after 1 year, I'm really happy with this little camera. It's performed great, and last month, Sony released the Mark II version of this camera, which essentially solved almost all of the ergonomic issues that I had with it. Only thing they didn't add was GPS, but they fixed the grip, they made it bigger, they moved the shutter release forward. They also added steady shot, which is awesome. I wish this had that, but I can live without it for a little while. And they also adjusted the lens mount, which I think I have to do because apparently this one is metal, plastic, metal, and with a really heavy setup, it can wiggle a little bit. I haven't really noticed that just because when I use a heavier lens setup, I'm using the Alpha adapter and I'm attaching my tripod mount to the adapter, not to the camera. So there's never really much hanging weight on it. Haven't had an issue with that, but I'm probably going to buy the full metal adapter ring sometime in the future. And when I do, I'll do a video that shows you how to install it. Apparently it's pretty easy. So that's my quick little review after having owned this camera for 1 solid year. I'm quite happy with it, and I would definitely recommend this to a friend. It's a nice full-frame camera, very small. People are always astonished when I show them the sensor size. They are blown away by something this small as a full-frame camera, and takes beautiful shots, nice dynamic range. So I hope you found this review somewhat helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Otherwise, like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.